you here, I am overwhelmed by the turnout. I think this is absolutely fabulous, and I hope that many of you will continue to visit us down at 2020 Hampton Street. If we had this kind of crowd every week, it would be exciting, wouldn't it?
It really would.
So thank you all for coming out.
And on behalf of Ms. Kennedy, I learned was in an accident earlier, and so she will not be here tonight. I saw Mr. Manning earlier. I'm not sure exactly where he is. And I will now go to my vice chair to my left, Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Bill Malinowski. I represent Council District 1. And y'all didn't come here to hear us do a lot of talking. I understand we've got questions from you folks, and that's what I'm looking forward to, getting to your questions.
Good evening, and I'm very happy to be here also. My name is Calvin Chip Jackson. I represent District 9, Northeast Columbia. I'm happy to be a part of this council and also very happy to be a part of what I consider to be probably one of the most transforming initiatives that has happened in Richland County in a very, very long time. Thank you very much.
I have not heard from Ms. Myers. I'm sure she's probably on her way. She does have a job, and my council members are always reminding me that they do have day jobs, some of us. So she'll probably be here next. Mr. Norman Jackson.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Norman Jackson, representing District 11. That's part of the Lower Richland community. And I welcome your input, your questions, and entertain everything you have to throw at us. Thank you.
Good evening. I have no district, but I'm Ashley Powell, the Planning Services Manager for Richland County Government.
Thank you. Thank you all. Well, I want to say that Richland County, Mr. Seals first threw out a word that, I mean, we all was jumping like popcorn, like revivification and all of that revivifying, and I could never pronounce it for the longest, but finally, you know, Sora, she finally helped me pronounce that word. So now we're talking about revitalizing Richland County. And those are the goals and objectives that we are looking at, is trying to figure out ways that we can reduce the blight. Lord knows if you look around the county, you can see where buildings were built and no longer are occupied. And basically it just creates, you know, a lot of havoc in the community, causes a lot of blight in the community. And I believe what our job and what we are attempting to do is to reduce and address that blight. We're looking at a lot of ways to do that through our code enforcement and all ways to make sure that we try to address some of those issues that we get concerns from you on a daily basis that, you know, we're having this problem with this area and then in that area. And I look around this room and I see so many familiar faces, and I would not even try to call not one of your names, but you know how well and how much we and myself care about this community that we live in. We're looking at tremendous growth over the next few years, and we've got to figure out ways how we're going to accommodate and to serve you. So that's why we're here, and that's why we're looking out, so we can have a look for better ways to give you the best service that we can. And this is to enhance, again our codification, and we're also looking at how we can respond to you and have a quicker response time to you, because sometimes I hear, oh, I've called and I didn't get an answer, someone didn't answer the telephone. We're going to try to address that and make sure that we reduce that time, your wait time. And this is one of the reasons why we're taking this planning and the revivification. We'll be going around the county. This is the first of many, so we'll be going around the county to listen to other people as well and get their input and put it all together and come back with you, and hopefully we'll have one of the greatest plans in the world. And this is why we, again, it's like being proactive rather than reactive. A lot of times we start to being reactive on stuff and we don't ever get it right. So if we get a head start and jump out and address and identify things first, I think this will give us a head start on where we need to go. And listening to you tonight will help us and really enhance that progress so that we can move forward. So the revivification, the revitalization is what we're here for tonight, and I think you all must think the same thing, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So with that, I guess I will turn it over to Ms. Beverly, do I turn it over to you now so that you can take over? And again, welcome and thank you for being here. And my district is District 2. That's the Broad River Road area. I knew I'd get applause. And the St. Andrews and Cedar Creek. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. We appreciate that. Before we get to your questions, we want to turn it over briefly to Mr. Seals, our county administrator, to give a brief overview of Richland Renaissance and specific information about what will happen here at Columbia Place Mall.
Good evening to all of you. You heard a lot of things about what is going to take place. I think that we can spend a lot of time taking up your time. I would prefer, Beverly and Madam Chair, if we could get right to the questions that people have, and let's answer those and make sure, because I think this is an exciting time. We are embarking upon an exciting time, and the best way, I think, to get it started is to actually show that we are prepared to answer any and all questions.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I'll turn it over to our Vice Chair, Mr. Malinowski, to get us started.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Thank you, Ms. Harris. Originally, we thought we'd be drawing and you would have a random chance to speak, but based on the number of names we have, as long as you limit your speech to 2 minutes, please, I think we're going to have the opportunity to let everyone speak. I'm going to call 3 names at a time. You'll be speaking from right over here at this microphone. And if you would line up as I call your name down that far aisle so we can move it right along, please. The first speaker will be Deanna Bookert, followed by Srini Devavapalli, and next, Eric Freeman.
Okay, we can go in order of appearance.
And
Okay.
would you give your name and probably your address, if you don't mind? We'd
All right,
love that.
Eric, step forward.
My name is Eric Freeman, and I head the organization that owns the property immediately adjacent to this property, the Columbia Place Mall. Our address is 201 Columbia Mall Boulevard. It's approximately 23 acres, 215,000 square feet. Our question going forward as we develop this project is, who do we need to be meeting with, and what kind of things do you have in place to collaborate with adjacent property owners to bring this entire area up?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Seals?
great question. We are in the process now of actually identifying an architect of record, a planner of record. What we will be doing is putting most of county operations, particularly administrative, in this facility. The county either owns right now or will own in a matter of weeks Sears, Dillard's, and Burlington. We have our challenges. We have something like 350, 400,000 square feet of need. Our desire is to actually cohabitate. Nobody is being put out. The idea is that we will all work and live together. A big undergirding current for Richland Renaissance is that we want to encourage economic development. We want to encourage business. So we don't enter into this trying to push people out of where they are. Once we have identified someone who we can professionally do the final layouts of offices and things like that, we will also work with all of our neighbors. We enter into this with the notion that we are good neighbors and we're going to be good neighbors. And that means that we won't surprise you. You know what's going on. There are a variety of things that we have to talk about. One of them is branding. The council has been very clear with us that it wants blight removed, and so there'll be some cleanup effort. And we think we can do all of that together, and we think we can do it in a way that everybody will be very happy.
Who's the next person?
Next question?
Who's the next person?
Yes, step forward, sir. First of all, I'm going to hold the mic, okay? And just state your name.
I'm Srini Devarapalli. I own this A&D Buffaloes. My question is basically, other than this, I see this 3 buildings you are occupying right now. Do you have any other plan, basically occupying other buildings, like revitalizing any other places other than this one?
Plans for other businesses here.
Okay.
Mrs. Seals, did you get-
Yes, I can answer that. If I understand the question, does the county have plans for other businesses?
Yeah, other than these 3 buildings, are you going to occupy any other buildings or any other places nearby?
Specifically here at the mall. Yes, specifically here at the mall.
The specific goal is that the county would eventually occupy all of the anchor buildings. We don't need those right now. The goal is eventually, if Macy's agrees, and Macy's has to agree, we would like to occupy Macy's. We, as I said earlier in my answer, the goal is to cohabitate. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that we're encouraging economic development. The chair said earlier that we want to make sure that as we do this, we don't get distant from citizens, we actually get closer to them. So we want to be able to work with the other owners in the mall to look for ways where we can actually link up and be closer to the residents of Richland County rather than being distant. And so in terms of, just for purposes of being clear, the original goal is to have all 4 of the anchors. We have 3 of them. That is more than enough for now. There will be several years before we would need more. We intend to be a good neighbor.
Okay.
Who's next?
Next.
The next person that I called the name for was Deanna Bookert. Are you here?
Ms. Booker?
Ms. Booker,
If not, then we will
go to the next person.
move on to Johnny Savage, followed by Henry Baskins. I believe that's Henrietta Baskins.
Yeah. There she go, right here.
Johnny Savage,
Oh,
over here, please, and then Henry Baskins. You be prepared for next,
Yes,
please.
next one. All right, sir. Just ask your question.
Yes, I'm the president of Windmill Orchard Neighborhood Association, and I have an issue with the junk cars, the parked cars, the wrecked cars, the whole 9 yards in my neighborhood. There was one individual that moved into my neighborhood, brought 5 junk cars, parked them in the backyard, put tarps or covers over them, and the headlights are busted out, fenders missing, the whole 9 yards. And you know as well as I know that this is one of the quickest ways to bring your property value down. And since this guy moved in the neighborhood, there have been many guys, people in the neighborhood who has followed suit. And that's not right. That have an effect on my property value as well as other folks in the neighborhood. Campers. What are y'all policy on campers, trailers? Also, you have overgrown yards that you give people 30 days to correct the problem. By that time, the grass is 3 feet tall. So, could you give me some feedback on that?
If I can, Madam Chair, and if this may be a time for council members, because this has been a real area for county council. If you recall, a lot of our discussions that have occurred over the last 17 months, county council has been very active and very motivated about the blight that exists within the community. And blight is defined in a variety of ways. One of the things that council wanted to address is abandonedness. And so one of the things that we're doing here is making sure this mall doesn't become abandoned. Council has taken a look and treated this as an asset. And it will continue to look at what exists in the community as assets. What can we do to make sure that they're viable and they're working? But we also have discovered, and we shared with council, that some 16,000 areas of blight, things where people are doing some things that they should not be doing. And what council is embarking upon, which you may not be aware of, and this is a great opportunity tonight to talk about it, is council is actually improving its ordinances, the actual nuisance ordinances, and their council is actually doing things, working with the community planning department to actually strengthen the ordinances that we have so that these kinds of things that Mr. Booker referred to don't sit there kind of as a malaise, and we all act like we're impotent and can't do anything about it for months and months and months. I think as we come through this year as a part of Richland Renaissance, Renaissance is not just about buildings. It's about the livability of this community. How are we going to address the issues that this community has been facing? The chair talks to me once every 2 weeks about certain areas in her district. This council member right here is fussing at us right now. How can we mobilize? And we also are working over in Denny Terrace right now, where we have a concerted effort where we're actually going in and we are cleaning up. And we're not going to leave until it is cleaned up. And we're going to do that throughout the county. The other thing that we've discovered is that there are a lot of areas in the county that are dark. Literally no lighting. Literally it feels unsafe. And that is unacceptable. And so what county council has done has allowed us to revamp the budget so that we can begin to address some of these areas. And there are quite a few that we've done already this year that the neighborhoods are lit. We just got through cleaning up the Richardson, I think it's Richardson Road area, where tough, and some of the things that we cleaned up, and they've gone right back in and made as if we never went in. We're working with the sheriff, and it is a concerted effort so that when we clean up, it is done. It is not something that is done for a week and mess happens the week later. You're going to see that. I think the folks that you're listening to and that are before you are incredibly passionate about how do we make sure that this is truly a renaissance, that it is a revitalization, that the pride that we have in this community is demonstrated by showing that we have clean neighborhoods, we have livable neighborhoods, we have neighborhoods that we feel proud of and don't have a problem with our children in them.
Mr. Livingston, did you want to say something?
Madam Chair, when someone come up with a concern like this, do we have someone that's making sure they write this down?
That's what
and get the specific
we just sent
address
out
and
to get-
information
Yes.
from this person? Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're getting away so we can get feedback. And like to know, basically, I would like to know the district so we can make sure that you're partnered with your council person so that your council person will be aware of it and you can work with your council person. So, Mr. Savage, we'll get all your information and then we can work with your council person. What area did you say you live in?
District 9.
District 9? Okay, okay, that's Mr. Chip Jackson. He'll take care of you. Thank you. I wanna piggyback on what Mr. Sears said. I live in the St. Andrews, and I've been living in the St. Andrews area for some 40-some years. And when I moved out there, it was just green and beautiful. And over the years, it has become very, decaying. Like the gentleman mentioned, I drive up and down Broad River Road, and I see car lots with a lot of covered cars and look like a graveyard. So Mr. Seals is absolutely right. Last week, I had the staff go out. We are working on a documentary to look at what St. Andrews was before and what it is today, and what we need to do to make sure that we brighten it up, lighten it up, put more lighting along the Broad River corridor. Well, I put lighting along there, but my constituents say the poles didn't look right. But I did put 59 lights with Mr. Livingston help. But now I got to work on getting some poles. So does anybody out there have any money that you can help me partner? See, people want stuff, but it costs lots of money. But thanks to Mr. Seals and others, we will be looking at how we can make sure that the lighting, because you want to be safe. And I drive up to Broad River Road and I-20, and I got to park there like 12 o'clock at night, and I don't feel too comfortable, so I want lighting where people have to park and in your neighborhoods. And there was a few years ago, we asked the sheriff department to put cameras, and I think they move cameras around the district. They don't stay in the same place, but that way we could identify, you know, unwanted things that are happening in the community. So the sheriff department is working with us to make sure we have these cameras. They rotate around the county, and I guess the deputy can help me with that. But we want you to know that I think on behalf of this council, we are very passionate about making sure that we are safe, and that's, to me, is important. Does any of my council members want to jump in and chime in on that?
No, we want to get everybody.
Here's my question.
Madam Chair, can I add one thing?
Yes, sir.
The county has something like 1,400 vehicles that it places on the road every day. And we have just under 3,000 employees. And what we have been working on is something called Workers on Watch. By that, I mean that we are reinvigorating ourselves as a staff to also become a part of this vision of making sure that things, places that are blighted, that we don't just drive by and look by, that when we see something that we notify, and then that we turn around and do something about it. We have a pilot program in place. Once that's going to go on through next month, we're then going to roll it out for public, and we'll actually have public apps whereby you can use apps to actually be able to notify areas of the county that you see that need to be cleaned up. And we're going to put standards in place on how we actually respond and make sure that those cleanup efforts are going on. And I just wanted to remind the chair of that.
I have Mr. Chip Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to make sure that those of you who are here tonight understand the importance of what's about to happen and why it is so significant, specifically at this mall. The very building we're sitting in tonight, Dillard's, this particular location, has been vacant since 2008, 10 years. And although that's a sort of a negative, on the positive, I was surprised at how well maintained it looks on the inside. But it's been empty for a decade now. And the goal is to take buildings like this that are structurally sound, that are usable and can be reused to meet the needs of our community, and to do it in a fiscally responsible way, and to make sure that we're responding to the needs of the community. The concept or the idea of the Richland Renaissance plan is just that. It's a concept and it's an idea, and it's looking at our community and how we can improve the quality and the quantity of services being delivered in our community. And so what better use of a facility like this particular one that's been empty for more than a decade to be able to come in and create a use and a utilization for it that meets the needs of this growing, rapidly growing Richland County that we're living in. I'm sure the chair will probably say, Mr. Seals will say as well, that the county that we're living in now, that's probably somewhere between 400 and 500,000 people, in just a matter of 8 to 10 years from now, we'll have more than 1 million people living in our county. I think it's, if not sooner than that. So I think it becomes a real, not a question of if, but when we do something to be prepared, as the chair said, in a proactive way to begin to respond to the anticipated needs of our county and of our community and of our citizens before we get to the point where we now have more people than we have services that can be provided for them. And so part of the excitement is being ahead of the curve. Part of the challenge is making sure that it makes sense, that it's fiscally responsible, and that it meets the needs that you, my neighbors, and our neighbors are saying that they would like to see addressed. So just want to give you a little backdrop and be a little specific as we talk about tonight in general terms about something that's happening and what will happen to the very building that we are sitting in tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any further comments from my colleagues?
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
We're trying to hold our comments so that we could give the audience the opportunity to ask the questions, so we've been sort of holding back.
Okay, thank you. Next, Mr. Malinowski.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I already called Henry Baskins. Is Ms. Baskins still here? Does she wish to speak?
I saw her earlier.
Yeah, if not, then in that case, our Public Information Officer, Ms. Harris, has a special guest that she'd like to introduce to say a few words, and then we'll get back to the remaining residents that have signed up to speak. Ms. Harris?
Thank you, Vice Chair. We have here tonight with us Mr. Shaw Pryor. He is the Senior Vice President of Moonbeam Leasing, and I think he can add to the comments that Councilman Jackson just addressed to just put things in more context for the audience. Mr. Pryor?
Good evening.
Good evening. You get to hold the mic? Okay. A couple of things that I wanted to mention is I travel over 20 different states, and one of the things that we do as owners of mall properties is we're trying and we're struggling and we're challenged each and every day with trying to refill these big anchor store boxes that are vacant. So the 200,000 square feet of J.C. Penney's or Dillard's or other anchor stores that are vacant, we have the challenge of trying to figure out how do we backfill them. Adaptive reuse is a very key phrase in today's real estate industry. How do we take these big boxes and convert them into a non-retail use? What happens when you convert these retail boxes into non-retail uses, you end up allowing the ability of increased traffic. Increased traffic then attracts other retailers to your location, and other retailers then create a synergy, and they're able to work together with the non-retail users. One of the things that I recently read was Helen Keller said that the worst thing about being blind was having sight with no vision. And one of the things that I have seen as I've studied the Renaissance project is Richland County, the administrator and the chairperson and the county council has really embarked on something new. They have the foresight to have looked at this property, which is an integral part of the community, and create a catalytic project that will not only help the mall flourish, but also help the outside community. So, Chair, Administrator, Council, on behalf of Stephen Maxson, the CEO of Moonbeam, he wanted me to personally come down and let everyone know that we will work with you guys in whatever way that we possibly can. We want to create a partnership or a partner relationship with the council because we feel that this is a project that will flourish, and other counties and other municipalities across the country will look at this one project and try to emulate it in various different ways across the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Okay, the next person we have is Mark Van Popering, followed by John Porter.
Okay, would you? Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, as long as you got your name on the hat, we'll get to you. We don't have them in order.
No,
Okay.
he
Okay,
was
here's-
the Johnny Savage that I called before that other fellow spoke.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We thought it was
Okay.
him.
All right.
Okay, we have Ms. Van Popering right here.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, you step forward, sir, and just state your question. Good.
Hi, I came to just learn something about this project. I hadn't learned enough to even ask a question, so I'm disappointed we don't know more. You know, we've taken buildings off the tax roll, but we don't know what's going to really happen. So I'd appreciate if you could, give us a little more of the master plan so we can ask more questions.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Sears, you recognized.
with regard to Columbia Place Mall, the Plans are to, as I mentioned earlier, to actually convert 3 of the anchors. Richland County has a responsibility by state law to provide certain services to state agencies as well as city, I mean, not city, but county functions. For example, the health department, probation, pardon, and parole, and others. And so what we will be doing is they will all come out and be a part of and co-locate with us. We also have county facilities that will co-locate. When you put it all together, it runs to about 350,000 square feet that we've run out of space. In the meantime, where the county is located now, 2020 Hampton, that site, once this site, these 3 anchor buildings are converted for utilization as offices, then 2020 Hampton will be vacated and portions of it will be demolished. Not all of it. Parking will not be demolished. Also, what you know as the council chambers, it is a separate building in and of itself. It was originally put in place for civil defense purposes. And so it will continue to function in that manner, as well as serve as a ceremonial courtroom and also a place for council to do council meetings. And then that location will then become the new judicial center. The plans are to make it a facility that meets the needs of the judicial function in Richland County for the next 70 years. What will initially be constructed, it will be expandable. So we're not going to do everything at once, but it will be able to be expanded so that the needs of the county and even in the long term will be addressed. Richland Renaissance has a third element, and that has to do with what we refer to as the Dutch Square area. We have transit issues. We have issues concerning light rail. We have a number of small business that they don't have places where they can kind of get started. If we're going to be a vibrant community, we have to encourage business startups. And so we're looking at that area and referring to it as the START Center. And that phrasing is used for purposes of indicating that's a place where things can get started. That's a place where even economic development can take place. That's a place where a lot of even entrepreneurship and cleanup. The next element is cleanup, revitalization, removal of blight. The very structure of county government is being changed so that we don't wait to be notified that there are problems in the county. We're actively trying to make sure that they don't exist. And we're looking at how we are delivering services, even when it comes down to how we work with businesses. Can we do that in a way that is more effective and more timely? Also, how do we work with citizens? Can we work with citizens in a much more friendly way, be less government sounding, and more where you are able to recognize we're your neighbors, and therefore we ought to serve you just like we know you, that we are your neighbors, that we know that you are our bread and butter, and we ought to be able to serve you in that way. So I'm not saying we don't do that, but we certainly need some growth there, and we are working hard to make improvements there. There are areas of the county, particularly the southeast area of the county, that have pockets where it's simply underserved. There are dark areas, there are blighted areas, and also when it comes down to trauma, if someone has a heart attack, they have a long way to go before their needs can be met. We don't want to have any area of the county where we can't get to within 8 minutes, where we can't serve them and make sure that they have a chance to live. And so that means we're going to need to do something in the southeast region. We're going to need to maybe work with the private sector, work with the hospital community. I don't know how all that's going to work out. But what council has authorized is for us to actually begin to seed fund. The county has amassed a lot of land, and so we have an opportunity to use that land. The county has amassed some dollars, and we have a chance to use those dollars to seed fund and make sure that we're beginning to address those issues. Councilman Chip Jackson mentioned just a few minutes ago that all predictions are that the county over the next 10 years will be growing by a minimum of 200,000 people. As we reach out and become a county of 1 million people who sleep here, you got to understand when that count, that's talking about who sleep here. That's not talking about all the, you probably double or triple that number in terms of who will be working here and doing business. It is a challenge right now, for example, when Carolina is doing so well, and we certainly want it to do well, don't we? But when we've got to make sure that we're providing emergency care, ambulances there. We also have to make sure that there's no part of the county that is not being served during those times. And so we've got to do some things in terms of emergencies, our EMTs, and we are working on doing that. And so Richland Renaissance takes in all of those elements. And what we have done is we have actually costed them out, the portions that can be done with public dollars. And the idea is, in many cases, public dollars, for example, on the Judiciary Center, we can do it. We can actually fund that. On other elements, we are seed funding. We're getting it started. We're working with the private sector, and we will make those things happen. Nothing can happen in this community on this magnitude that addresses community issues without us working together. And so that's why perhaps there are some who like to say, well, we don't know all the details. I'm guilty of that, and I apologize. We haven't given you perhaps the details. But the details are what you're hearing. That's the reason for working with you this evening. That's the reason as we pull things together, we have to pull in all aspects of the community in order to make sure that the community is in fact addressed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next person.
Mr. Seals, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the last comments from Mr. Poperine, who just spoke last, was about taking property off the tax records. And I believe Mr. Seals, the administrator, touched on it when he said the county has quite a bit of property. You'll see that other properties are going to be sold, and those properties will be going back onto the tax records. So that will be kind of a balance in there.
Vice Chair Malinowski, that's correct. The county has over 400 pieces of property that have not been on the tax rolls. County Council the other evening made a decision and directed the staff to begin the process of looking at all of those properties and putting them back on the tax rolls so that they're working. All those things work together to bring in extra dollars, but it also works together to be, it doesn't solve everything about taxes, but certainly if our properties are doing what they're supposed to do, it begins to help.
Okay, so we have next.
Yeah, this is John Porter. John Porter, he's with lives in District 3.
Okay.
Yep, I live in District 3, but I represent one of the retailers here in the Columbia Mall, and I really appreciate this forum because you guys have answered a lot of questions that was concerning a lot of the retail operations here in the mall. But with all the questions being answered, I'm still recruiting, looking to place a particular manager, in one of the stores here. And what my concern was is about how long will this take place? I know we said it's a done deal with the Dillards being taken over and the anchor buildings, but what kind of time frame are we looking so that when I'm recruiting this particular person who's going to take care of their family off of this salary that we're going to be paying them, what kind of time frame are we looking at?
Generally, Richland, the major parts of Richland Renaissance, which you have heard about and they've been announced in the media, our goal is to get those done within 4.5 to 5 years. With regard to this location, we are challenged, and our intent is over the next 24 months to have these buildings redone and laid out so that we can actually move in them about 24 months from now.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Malinowski, because we
Okay,
got a
then,
lot. we can do.
next individuals are going to be Eugene Speed, Walter Cooper, followed by Bernetta Moultrie.
All right, is Eugene Speed?
Well, gentleman just before just kind of answered some questions in reference to timeline. I live in District 3. My other concern is, are y'all going to do any kind of building extended from here or along Shakespeare Road?
No.
We just right here.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. Next.
Okay, Walter Cooper.
Okay. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Cooper. You can come
And
on
there are some seatings for those of you who are standing. If you can just fill in, there are some seatings that you can fill in.
Okay. That's
Okay.
Mr. Cooper. He's also lives in District 3.
Walter Cooper. I believe in carry my own weight, so excuse me for snatching away from him. But anyway, I'm a resident of Trenton Acres, which is in District 3, McBride District. And I have a concern because in our neighborhood, there's a resident that's been vacant for at least 15 years. We've been complaining about that building for about 5 years. And the answer we are getting is we don't know who the property owner is, but somebody's getting tax notice. So I feel like if they're getting tax notice, they're liable for the property. The county's condemned it, and there have been 3 owners since it's been condemned. I'm hoping that Ms. McBride or someone will look into that and see about getting that building demolished because the roof has deteriorated and falling in. And secondly, I have a question concerning Little Richland. Properties down in that area, and I noticed somewhere that they stated that the county is going to be looking for additional properties. Now, this property, the taxes has been paid on it. What procedure would a person have to go through in order to get that property turned over to the county?
You want to sell property to the county?
I'm not going to ask if the county got money, because I know the county have money.
No.
Oh, yeah. No, everybody. County keep money. They got taxpayers. They got taxpayers. And you guys are, your time are donated, so you're not on salary. So that's, yes, I would like to check into see about having some property sold to the county or whatever. And if so, what
Actually, as
procedures
you turn around, when you're done, someone will grab you and they'll get that information, and I'll actually give you a call in a couple of days.
Okay, they're not gonna lock me up.
Well, I don't know. You said we have money.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes, Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper, we need Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper, you're not done yet. Come on, come this way.
I just want to thank you for coming, so we're going to take care of that issue.
Yeah, when you're done, we'll just get an address.
Yeah, and we would like to see you at some of our neighborhood meetings because you've been trying to hide from us.
Now, Mr. Cooper, talk to your president, Mr. Holliday. I keep in touch with him. Thank you.
Yeah, we'd like to look in your face too, you know.
Okay.
All right, thank you for your patience. Next name?
Okay, next.
We've got Bernetta Moultrie. Bernetta Moultrie here. And then followed by Stephen A. Garrick.
Okay. And which district are you in, Ms. Moultrie?
I'm in the Greenview community. I just relocated here, so I'm not sure of the district. Is it 9?
District 3.
District 3. Okay, thank you.
And your question?
I have a 2-part question, but before I have my 2 main questions, I just heard you speak about property that are not on the tax rolls. So how does property get off the tax rolls before I go to my 2 questions?
Sears, you tell them.
By not paying taxes.
Mr. Seals.
Mr. Sears, I'm gonna let you answer that.
All right, any property is generally owned by the government, that property is not paying taxes. If we're actively using the property, it is not paying taxes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now for my two questions. First one, I live in the Greenview community, which is right down the street, right down 277. And in the Greenview community, we have many seniors and retirees that are living there, and many of us, I being one of them, lived away for a number of years, and we are now returning to our family homes because we love the Greenview community. Do you have a plan within your budget that will help us in improving and upgrading the homes without our tax base being jeopardized? And the second question is, we have the W.G. Sanders Middle School that has been vacant for a number of years. I happen to live on Alita Street, right up from W.G. Sanders. And we have a concern for the revitalization for W.G. Sanders Middle School. Do you have a plan in place, or are you addressing the issue of improving that facility for the benefit of our Greenview community?
Okay, first of all, when you mentioned the W.G. Sanders, that is school, so we'd have to go through, that's District 1. So they would be the person that you would send that question to, or go to their meetings to get that addressed. The other one you mentioned, the Greenview, in terms of upgrading seniors' homes, is that what you mentioned?
Yes.
So now, I'm not exactly, to me personally, I cannot answer that question. Perhaps Mr. Seals can, our administrator, but I don't know of a program that we have. Do you, Mr. Pierce and Mr. Livingston been here longer than me, so they could probably help Mr. Seals with that question. Mr. Livingston.
Well, that is within the city limits.
Yes.
And I would suggest that you go to the Community Development Corporation and talk to them about the different options that they have as it relates to home assistance and so forth. But I think that's the best place to start.
Okay, so in essence, the Richland Renaissance program does not address housing in any way? It's just the businesses and...
No, that's not accurate.
It's not in the city of Columbia that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Is Greenview in the city?
Yes.
Greenview is in the city limits.
All of Greenview?
Well, the Greenview community is in the city.
But the parts of that area, though, are in the county.
Well, then we got another name for it, but for the Greenview community, that's,
The
that part is
Greenview proper is in the city of
Mm-hmm.
Columbia. We've been here now for over 50 years, and we ain't going nowhere. And we do want to be considered in whatever the revitalization efforts are for the city of Columbia. And I'm for progress, and I'm very excited, and I commend you for your vision, because to me it means that we are a progressive community, and I can see that just since since I have returned to Columbia, that it's an exciting place to live. And I like what's happening to Columbia Mall. This was very vital part of my life before I left, and to return to see it all vacant and now you're doing something about it, it excites me. But I want our senior citizens and our residential areas to be included in whatever Columbia, or whatever the councilman, county council, city council, whatever the government is doing. Don't forget about those who made Columbia, which is the senior citizens. Thank you.
Wow, that's great. Ms. McBride.
I just wanted to let,
Ms. Moultrie?
Ms. Buckles?
There's a response? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for coming, and we talked last night, and we will work together in getting with the City Council, Mr. Davis, and also District 1, Mr. Aaron. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, the last one I have here is Mr. Stephen Garrick. Mr. Garrick here. I think he's coming back here.
Okay.
And you can probably call 2 more while he's coming.
Okay.
Oh, you wait.
Stephen Garrett? Okay. And what district are you in? Number 10. Okay, go ahead. What's your question?
My question is, I've been reading about a lot of this is being developed, and I'm excited about the new innovation that y'all moving forward. As a constituent and a taxpayer, I just want to know what is the physical budget it's going to cost for people like me as a property owner. Is my taxes, my resident taxes going to increase? I want to know is it going to impact the economic growth in the city of Columbia? Sure. Is it going to bring more jobs besides state and county jobs? Y'all going to bring in any other partners or corporate partnership with small businesses, not only in the state of South Carolina, but out of the state of South Carolina? I've been a self-employed businessman for 20 years. I see a lot of growth leave this area, and I'm not leaving Columbia. I love this place. I'm passionate about it. I'm more innovative. I've been an innovator for 25 years. I just think that we waste too much of time. So my question is, how much is going to cost the taxpayers, and what is the time to get it from start to finish? You know, we support you councils and through thick and thin, but we don't want to wait too long. I'm 53 years old. Time is the essence. Life. We don't want to wait too long. Okay? I'm just saying that I travel around the world. I've seen infrastructure in China was built in less than 10 years. It takes us 30 years to get one thing across. We need to come together, unite, and support not only just you as a city council to represent the people, but the people need to support you as well. So we are really passionate about what you're doing. We just want to know, what are you passionate about when it comes to our dollars and how it needs to be spent? That's all I care about. Thank you.
Well, I'm passionate about your dollars. Mr. Sears, please tell him about...
No, I thought he was talking to you all.
Well, my administrator tells me that, you know, that we got a budget and it's not going to impact, it's not going to change your taxes. And if my administrator have anything different, then me and him going to have to deal with it. But it's like he's telling us that we're not increasing the taxes. Mr. Sears, if I'm saying something wrong,
No, you're saying it correct.
You better clarify it now because
No,
I've got to go home.
No, we are not. We as the council knows, we spent a lot of time.
Excuse me, Mr. Seals. Mr. Garrett, could you please listen to the response? You can talk to the media afterward. Thank you. Right.
Oh man.
Here's your answer right there.
What I was saying is this: as the council is aware, we have been working with the council for roughly 16, 17 months. We have, during that time, have been examining county finances. We have looked under every nook and every cranny. Our job has been to get that financial house in order so that we do not have to raise the taxes. We're going to live within our means. And the amount that the government is using to get this accomplished is $144 million. And we have a variety of things that we can share with you on how that's accomplished. But we are not having to raise taxes to do that. We have restructured our finances so that we can do more with less. We are looking, and council knows that there are a lot of challenges that have been presented to us as a county over the last 16, 17 months, and we've risen to meet those. That's not because of any one person. It is because we have a council that has been very directed and very much concerned about our finances and taxes. We also have a staff. We have a group of employees that you got to give them their due. They have, when they've been called upon to do it, they have not grumbled and complained. They've risen to the occasion. We all make mistakes, but generally we're getting this done within the resources that we have right now. Now, having said that, I think it's also important for you to know that our goal is to grow the community. That means that if we create those job situations that you're talking about, then the tax base will grow. And so we are specifically getting very aggressive about trying to make sure that we're not just going after the big home run economic development. Certainly we're trying to do that. We want another China Jushi. But we're also recognizing as a part of Richland Renaissance that there's a lot of folks out there like you who are starting businesses, who need to have a place where they can sort of incubate, get them started, and not go under. You know, most small businesses go under in 5 years. What can we do to help them get past that time? I've owned 2 small businesses, and we grew them into businesses that were profitable, but we had to put a lot of work in, and I spent a lot of time at midnight and at 3 o'clock in the morning making sure those things happen. So we have an appreciation for not just the government way to do it, but also the reality of what do you do to make sure that you can meet payroll. And so what you have are people who are very serious about that. You have a council who's very serious about that. And I already have people, believe it or not, who've actually doubled back and I have at least one who talked originally about selling one of the structures and has already come back and said, we may want to buy some property. And I said, why? Because it looks like this thing's going to take off. And it looks like there's going to be a lot of people coming. And so we're not going to let you just sit there and not make money off of that. So a part of this is economic development. And I hope that answers your question.
One of the things I want to say is, when I look at the word Renaissance, in China, they say the #1 growth to economy is transportation.
Transportation.
You have to have it. It's got to be convenient. City of Columbia is the capital. We need to make I've been in transportation business for 25 years. We need to make it convenience. It create more jobs. It brings more corporate from each cities and cities and cities. I travel all around. They say the problem is with Columbia, beautiful place, love it, but the transportation is horrible. So we got a beautiful project, we got a beautiful vision, but you have to get transportation. You got to make it convenient.
Give us about 20 days, 20, 30 days. There are going to be some major announcements about transit. But you are so correct. When we talk about it being 1 million folk, one of the realities is it's 1 million folk, but the streets aren't going to grow. The streets that exist are the streets that exist. And if we are not smart, we're going to have these streets so crowded that the movement of the city and the county will be affected. I don't think that has to happen. We are working right now. A major part of Richland Renaissance is to address the transit issue. That has to be done working with the city, and council is already starting those discussions right now. What obviously, and I know sometimes the press wants to get in and tell you everything that's going on, and certainly there's merit to that, but there are some discussions you have to have with each other. I don't have a right to go tell somebody what you told me. You have a right to do that. And so there are discussions that are starting, and what I'm excited about, and I think what you're going to be excited about, is that people are not ignoring the transit issue. They know that has to be addressed.
Well, let me chime in on that, because that is my passion. I am a transportation nut and a buff. That's what I live every day for. And I am currently the chair of the CMRTA. And basically, We spend numerous hours looking and trying to plan and looking for the best transit systems and the best transit places where we can put our transit center right now. We've just did a feasibility study. That study I'm not pleased with. So we're making that transportation very much a part of the Renaissance. Mr. Sears, no, I wouldn't be on board with this had it not been for the transportation piece, because I know many of us over the years, we've been used to just getting into our cars. But if you're like me, I hate garages, and I come downtown and can't find a place to park, and they tell me I got to go to a garage that's 100 blocks from where I got to go, and I'm wearing my stilettos, and you know, I don't want to be scratching up my shoes. So I really want to make sure that where we have our transit, it gets people there and moving them and looking at like Blythewood and park and rides. So transportation is, in my opinion, uno in making sure that this city is mobile. One of the things I said years ago that when we fought for the penny, I fought for it because of transportation, to make sure that this is the capital city. And because it is the capital city, not having a viable transportation system is not an option. We have got to have a very viable transportation system because we're bringing in more people. More people are, like the young lady says, she's coming back from up north, and they are used to jumping on a bus, jumping on a train. Most of them don't have cars, and so we've got to, you know, adjust to that, and that's basically where I am with the transportation piece. So, yes, that is very near and dear to my heart, and so thank you so very much. And I really want to thank you. But I really want to say, I noticed that Ms. Jeanette McBride, we do have some elected officials in the audience. And before I go from there, I really want to make sure that I acknowledge my colleague, Ms. Myers. I told her she would probably be here. So, Ms. Myers, you can introduce yourself.
Let me apologize for being late. Thank you. Let me apologize for being late. I came from a meeting at the Conservation Commission downtown, meeting on merging some of the plans for the southeast part of my district, Lower Richland, with the Renaissance plan. So we were running, but it's good to see so many of my constituents in the room. Thank you for coming, District 10, and thank you for your questions and your input. It's great to see you. Oh, Ms. Irick is raising her hand. She says she has another question.
Okay, and then I really want to say, a lot of people didn't sign up, but there are so many of you in this audience, and I know that you all had questions, and I see someone raising their hand in the back, and I want to make sure that we don't leave here and not give those of you who took the time in your schedule to come the opportunity to state your questions. So if there's someone else who didn't sign up, please let us know right now so we can address that briefly.
Okay, here's Ms. Irick from District 10.
Yes, Ms. Irick.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Sills, I want to commend you and your staff for such an ambitious, excellent plan, particularly with no millage attached.
There you go.
I'm going to hold all of you to that. Okay. My taxes are not going to go up. Our taxes are not going to go up so far, according to this ambitious plan. Yes. Thank you. A couple of questions for my district. I live in Lower Richland. The agribusiness hub, will that include other business incubators? I'm getting ready to retire. I can't see at night on those dark roads going up in that area where you're talking about the real thing. The transportation piece, are we talking about rail services, possibly?
Yeah, that is very much a part. One of the things we're looking at, commuter rail, and that is, to me, we're meeting constantly trying to figure out how we blend this rail piece in. As you all know, the malfunction, we call it malfunction junction. The South Carolina Department of Transportation now are calling it crossroads, but we know it as malfunction junction. I don't care what name they label it as. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that there are numerous rails that run along 126, and I think we're trying to get them, when they're planning this, to have some kind of a rail into that component. Well, all of my life is since I've been into transportation, so how we connect Columbia. The fact of the matter, if we can connect Charlotte, I've always called it the 3 C's, and that's Charlotte, Columbia, and Charleston. Once we start looking at the rail and here and the commuter rail and how we connect these cities, you're talking about enhancing the economic growth and job creations and getting people to and from their jobs quickly. You're going to understand that parking at Lexus or the Beamer and jumping on some commuter rail is going to be much better for you, and it's going to be so advantageous. And so, yeah, that is very much a part. It's on the table. The Central Midlands Council of Governments, we're looking at that, and we're looking at feasibility studies to see how all of this can blend together. So, yeah, that is very much a part of what we're doing. And I know transportation is a big thing for all of you right now. So
great, thank you. And one last thing, Ms. Myers, when we began to look at laying the plans for Lower Richland Boulevard, Air Base Road, putting up that complex, that municipal complex, please take into consideration traffic control. You cannot have an entrance or an exit going into that municipal complex on Lower Richland Boulevard unless you're going to expand those lanes, and I really don't see how that's going to happen going into those folks' front yard.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say thank you. And we didn't answer your first question about the agribusiness hub, small business incubator. There is a plan in the works, but obviously a lot of this has to have iterative community meetings. We've got to get out into all of our areas now and talk with all of you, all our constituents, and see what your inputs are for the various conceptual designs that have been put out there. But yes, absolutely, transportation issues will be taken into consideration. And yes, that plan for our community, Southeast Richland County, does include a small business incubator.
Great. Thank you, guys. Good job.
Thanks.
okay, well, if there are no further questions from the audience, like I said, we will not leave here without having your questions answered. And if not, if there are no further questions from the audience, the next thing on the list would be the closing remarks. But before I say anything else, because I can talk all night, I love to talk. I don't know whether this. I'm worse than Mr. Seals. I'm trying to, not be as bad as Mr. Seals, but I'm doing my best to tone it down. But I really want to make sure that I give my colleagues the opportunity, if they have any closing remarks, to say and to encourage their constituents who took the time in their schedule to come out tonight, because you all are very important to us, and we are here tonight to let you know that how we feel. And I will let all of my co-workers here have some closing remarks before I say anything closing. And I'll start on the end with Ms. McBride, because she got all the people here tonight.
Well, thank you so much. And again, I've called a number of people. I called the presidents of our community organizations to make sure that you got the information. And I'm excited again about what's going to happen here and what's going to happen throughout Richland County. And please know that I'm available to assist you in whatever way I can. And I look forward to working with you on the plans for the future with the Renaissance program. Thank you.
Let me also, too, thank you so very, very much for coming. I think your input is what's going to make a difference as we move forward. And I'm one who's willing to listen to that at any time and any place. And I do plan, you all asked some tough questions, and I plan, and you got some answers. And I plan to make sure I stick to it and hold my colleagues accountable to sticking to those responses that you received tonight. I'm talking about responses, reference your being involved in some of the planning, reference the cost of the project, all of those things that were mentioned here tonight. You can depend on me to make sure I hold myself and my colleagues accountable to those things.
I've got a few things I'd like to say. One of the things I think has gone overlooked, or maybe is misunderstood by the public, is how we dreamed this up. We didn't all get together in a room and say, how can we spend $144 million of your money? That's not how this happened. When Mr. Seals arrived, he did some planning sessions with us and found out from us what our visions were of the county. That's true. But one of those, we also looked at practical things like he's talked about, like blighted areas and things. But the big stimulus for all this whole project was the fact that we have a judicial center on Main Street that is absolutely, totally out of date, busting at the seams, and has got to be replaced. We have been trying to replace this building for 10 years and have not known how to do it because we were terrified of the cost. Mr. Seals came up with an incredibly creative idea. One of our problems with relocating that judicial center was the fact that you've got to have a big piece of land. There is no land available in downtown Columbia where the courthouse needs to be. If any of you know where 6 to 10 acres of land is available, then we'll go back and maybe take another look. But it's not available downtown, and the courthouse needs to be downtown. I think every one of you would agree with that. You don't want the Richland County courthouse located, bless my soul, in Blythewood or Lower Richland. But I mean, the courthouse needs to be. Courthouse, yeah, the courthouse needs to be downtown. All right. The administrative building doesn't need to be downtown. So we didn't decide, okay, let's go out and buy Columbia Mall and move the. Let's find. That was not the motivation for this project. The motivation was Mr. Seals figured it out. He said, well, you know what? We've got 6 acres of quality land right here on 2020 Hampton Street. And 2020 Hampton Street, although you go in it, you'd say, well, there's nothing wrong with this building. We're having problems with that building. I was in our IT department today, and it looks like a junkyard because they don't have any space. That's where this project came from. So the project did not start with us just thinking how to spend $144 million of your money. And now the other thing I want to say is the $144 million of your money. That money is not going to leave, most of that money is going to stay in Columbia. And it's going to multiply itself with jobs because some of you are going to be building this stuff. Hopefully your local companies are going to be doing all this work. So the $144 million is going to stay right here. And hopefully it will then generate jobs temporarily, and then it will generate more jobs in the future, hopefully from the stimulus that it could create right here in this mall. I was surprised today to come in and find out all these businesses were here. This is going to do nothing but bring back life to all these small businesses in this mall. The other thing about the $144 million, and I won't bore you to death with financial numbers, but those of you who know me, I do numbers, and I do money, and I try my best to look after your money. We're not going to spend $144 million tomorrow. You heard him, so this is going to be 4 to 5 years. We have $17 million in cash to go into this project. And that's going to, so no capital money other than what we already have is going to be spent this year. The financing plan for this calls for the debt to be spread out over a period of time. We pay off the debt as it comes along. And at the end, yes, we're going to end up with probably at the end with some debt that'll take a little longer term, but it is debt that is manageable according to our financial people, our financial planners, that debt is manageable without a tax increase. So I just want to reassure you that that is what we've been told, and that is what is going to be the guiding force of financials on this thing. With that, I think I'll be quiet, but I just felt like those were a couple of areas that had not been really looked at that closely and maybe needed to be talked about. So,
wow, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't top that. Looks to me from the vacancies and the seating now that we've got more staff members here than we do residents and citizens. So I'll just ditto and piggyback on what Mr. Pierce said and ask Mr. Chip Jackson to continue. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you, Bill. I think one of the best ways to determine what will happen in the future is to look at what has happened in the past. Many of you saw the news and you heard the news when they talked about the challenges that the county faced with regards to its EMS operation and the underfunding of EMTs. And Administrator Seals, along with this council, made a commitment to address that issue, to address it in a positive way, to retain some of our best and brightest and not lose them to Lexington County. Many of you are probably aware that as county employees, their health care insurance, certainly like many of our health care insurance, gone through the roof. Administrator Seals, along with this council, made a decision to make sure that the health care insurance rates that were rising would be provided for and assistance would be provided for our loyal 3,000 plus employees. Many of you are aware and have heard on the news with regards to what's happening with our fire and public safety and the challenges that they face and have been facing. And our council, again, made the commitment and the decision to address those issues, whether it be with 911 centers and other operations, to make sure that the service that we as citizens depend on so deeply and so critically are in place and are the quality that we need, and it doesn't break the bank to do that. And so when the idea of Richland Renaissance came along in that context, based upon those things I just mentioned and others that I'm probably forgetting about at the moment, it was under that umbrella that we moved into this arena, believing that now we're going to do the very same thing as it relates to bringing services and not buying more than we need to buy, not purchasing, you've heard that tonight several times, not purchasing any more property than we need to get the job done. I'm sorry the gentleman who was a vendor in the mall had left, but it's encouraging for me, and one of the reasons I'm excited about it is because we're looking to become partners and allow those businesses that are in the mall now and future businesses, one, to stay and others to come and to grow and to develop. And so I want to think that the track record of this council, the leadership that it has provided, the track record of our administrator, has sent a positive message contrary to what some have printed in the press. This was not, as Mr. Pierce said, this was not done in a closet, in a dark room, secret meetings. I was sort of shocked at the naivete of some of the articles that I read. Apparently they don't understand that when you're thinking about buying a building, you don't announce in the public that you're thinking about buying the building if you want to get it at the best price you're going to buy it at. So to think that you can talk about that publicly before you get to that point is absurd, but that's a conversation for another time. I want to thank my colleagues on this council for their leadership, for their courage, for their thoughtfulness, and for their fiscal responsibility, because I believe that, as Mr. Seals has indicated tonight, echoed by Mr. Pierce, that this is a plan that we're going to be able to embrace, that we can afford, and that's going to make a difference in the lives of the citizens of Richland County. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you for your support now and in the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being here. I'd like to first associate myself with the very positive comments coming from all of my colleagues tonight and say I echo those comments, and they, in fact, reflect my sentiments. And I'd just like to remind us all that one of the most overwhelmingly positive things about Richland Renaissance is it is, in fact, a rebirth of the top of the county to the bottom of the county. We're not leaving any areas out. I want to say that again. We are not leaving any areas out. We are all taxpayers across Richland County. And so this plan finally speaks to that fact and attempts to look at areas that may have been overlooked previously, that may have needed a little bit more care. And it speaks to a top to bottom revitalization of what I would say we all agree is the most dynamic county in the state. And it will begin to make us look like what we already know we are, which is the top county in the state. So I'm grateful that you've come. I'm grateful for your enthusiasm and that so many of you have stayed. I'm certainly delighted to see so many of my constituents. And I remind us all, I echo very loudly the comments that Mr. Jackson just made. This has not been a secret plan. I'm going to say that again. This has not been a secret plan. There's nothing stealth about it. we have obviously been mindful at every step of what is going to be a huge plan, that the biggest pieces of it, the most costly pieces, needed to be negotiated in a way that didn't blow your tax money. And so, no, we did not announce that we were interested in these big boxes before we were, and we didn't confirm it when people asked. And that might have looked to some people as if there were a hidden plan. But the whole point was that we were respecting your tax dollars. Because the minute you announce that Richland County is involved, everybody thinks we got all the money in the world. And so the way we looked at the big boxes was making sure that we were good stewards, that we could go back and look you in the face and say, yes, Mr. Seals has aggressively gotten the best price. So if you feel like you didn't know that we were interested in these boxes before that happened, that's because we were trying to protect your dollars. Because we know that all our money gets shaken out of your pocketbooks, one nickel at a time, right? And we're careful stewards of that. So I thank you again. Maintain your enthusiasm for the project. Certainly, if you're in my district and you have questions, we will be having iterative conversations and conversations and conversations about all of this. I'm very excited about bringing Richland County services closer to all of your homes and providing for senior citizens greater access, greater ease of access to county services. And I look forward to talking about this with certainly my constituents in great detail. Thank you.
Good evening and thank you. Thank you for coming out. I see some of my constituents here also and the concern. We had to be proactive as we grow, and especially in the Lower Richland community. You have been hearing about the citizens would like to have all these amenities, but we do not have the infrastructure. So we are being proactive to provide an infrastructure so we can have the buildings and whatever amenities you have, so the citizens can be, everything can be utilized. So you don't have to go to Columbia to pay your taxes. You don't have to go to cross town to do anything. The services would be there also. This is county-wide. This will be in my colleague Malanaski, who is on the way in on the other side, and we're trying to address everything. So those are some of the concerns we are addressing. In my district, I have urban, suburban, and rural, quite different crowd, and there are many needs. I'll be having, since I've been on council, every year I have a State of the County address to District 11. And I'll be having one on the 22nd, that's next week Thursday at 6 o'clock at the Adult Activity Center, where I will be giving the state of the county to the district, and a week following that, I'll have a community meeting also at the Sheriff's Substation to discuss the Renaissance Plan. How we go, get your input from Lower Richland community and what you'd like to see, how we can address it, how we can better serve you. So this is not a top-down, we're waiting for your input. And my colleagues will be having discussions and community meetings with their constituents also, so we can put this plan together. So you will have input. It's about you, your needs, your desire, your wants, and we're trying to address that. So again, thank you for coming out, and I'll be seeing you soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. And since I'm the only senior citizens in the room, you got to understand that I'm very concerned about the seniors. I want to.
Madam Chair, is the lady that talked about senior citizens still here?
Yes.
I wanted to share something with you.
Please.
Just a minute, and I didn't want to interrupt you earlier, but just to show you that this council is committed to the seniors. Last year, we provided money to completely eliminate the waiting list for Meals on Wheels. Mm-hmm. So that's how much we care. In a very tight budget year where there wasn't a lot of money, we committed that money, and it has done wonderful things. It eliminated totally the waiting list. So I want you to know that we were, to the lady, we're definitely committed.
And I'm glad you mentioned the veterans. Are there any veterans in the room? Oh, we really want to thank you and take the time to thank you for your service. And I'm going to hold up my hand for my husband because he's a veteran as well. And again, I want to thank my colleagues. I want to thank each and every one of you. I'm looking around in the room and I see Ashley, who's working on my documentary. Ashley, she's here. But thank you again for coming. This has been a very, very informative afternoon. And I want to thank you for your input and want you to know that we will be following up with those things that you have expressed to us this afternoon. And we're excited to serve you. And I can feel my vice chair over here kicking me on my feet, telling me I need to be quiet. But the fact of the matter, again, thank you for coming out. Thank you for your input. And look for more of these around the county. Thank you. Yeah, because she knows she'll get riled up.